Hey everybody, I'm here to help you out and figure out how to not freak the fuck out during this upcoming Mercury retrograde. Are you already feeling it? We're actually in the shadow period of Mercury retrograde, and Mercury retrograde is a time of the month, or actually the year, 3 times a year, it goes backwards. Well, from our perspective on Earth, it goes backwards. So a little bit about me, if you don't already know me, I think you do because you're in my Facebook group. My name is Leslie Tagorda, and I call myself the brand navigator. I'm part business coach, part astrologer, and part designer, and I've been helping hundreds of women-owned businesses, startups, and nonprofits over the years to help gain clarity and confidence in their business by aligning their vision, voice, and stars to their astrological natal charts. It's super exciting. Astrology provides so much insight. So today, what we're going to really be talking about for the Mercury retrograde is I want to talk about exactly what it is and how you don't have to freak the fuck out over it. Every time Mercury retrograde happens, I see on all of these groups and posts and forums, oh my God, the sky is falling. It must be because of Mercury retrograde. Well, you don't have to do that. So we're going to talk about exactly what it is, what the Mercury energy represents, and what happens during a retrograde about that energy, the signs that are going to feel it and where they're going to feel it in their lives, and how to really harness this energy to best move your business forward so you're not feeling like you're just stuck and freaking out and like things are just falling from the sky. All right. I'm also going to answer some questions that you might have. So feel free to pop me some questions in the comments. I've copied over some questions that people have left in comments before. I just want to answer everybody's questions. All right. So let's start off with basically what is the Mercury retrograde. So the planet of Mercury, from our perspective on the Earth, just because we are not a geocentric, the planets do not revolve around us. It might look like it from our little perspective on Earth, but because all of the planets are moving around the sun and they're going at different rotations, and Mercury goes really, really fast around the sun. From our perspective on the Earth, it looks like 3 times a year Mercury actually traces its path back. So that's what it's called, is the retrograde, because from our perspective on Earth, Mercury looks like it's actually tracing its steps backwards in the sky. So I posted on Facebook earlier and also on Instagram kind of a little map of the progression of Mercury. It's really beautiful how it actually creates this almost, I don't know what to call it, like an inverted flower or a spirograph or something. It's really amazing. So basically, from our perspective on the Earth, generally when Mercury is going forward or directly, it looks like it's just kind of progressing in the sky naturally, moving a little bit by little bit every night in the sky. But right before it starts to go retrograde, it kind of slows down a little bit. So imagine like you're driving a car and you're kind of stopping on the brakes. Hey, Alex, when you're stopping on the brakes, you don't just stop, right? It looks like you slow down before you come to a complete stop. So in the sky, Mercury's in the shadow period right now. So meaning Mercury looks like it's slowing down. It's slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. So we're in that period right now, and we've been in that slowing down shadow period since February 19th. So you might have already been kind of feeling kind of wonky a little bit or wanting to slow down naturally because Mercury is already slowing down. And on March 5th is when it goes to a complete stop. So this is like, again, if you're driving a car and you need to go in reverse, you're not just going to all of a sudden go into reverse, right? That would just be a total shock. You're going to slow down, come to a and then go in reverse. So Mercury, before it goes into reverse, is going to come to a complete stop on, what are my notes here, on March 5th. So that's probably one of the days that is going to feel the most wonky for us all, like just energetically, because like Mercury now is like, bonk, stop. And then it'll progress in its backwards retrograde motion for 21 days, 3 weeks, from March 6th through the 27th. Now, this is normally when people are like starting to talk about Mercury retrograde in, you know, Instagram and all your social feeds. Oh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. But there's lots of things that you can do knowing that retrograde happens for 3 weeks. And actually, Mercury retrograde happens 3 times a year just because of our perspective on the Earth. So before I go on to that, I just want to let you know the rest of it. So once Mercury starts to go forward again from its backward station, it needs to come to a complete stop. That happens on March 28th, where it then starts to go forward. But then we come into a post-shadow position. So this is what astrologers talk about. So basically, Mercury has to now retrace the path that it went retrograde in before it starts going forward again. So only on April 16th, that seems like so far from now, will Mercury have reached the place where it stopped going backwards. So again, I don't know if I explained that correctly. Sometimes I'm not super clear in my communications, but the shadow period, April 16th, is where Mercury will have reached its spot where it started to go backwards. It'll have finished retracing where it went backwards, and so it will start moving again in the progression of the sky. All right, so by April 16th, you're going to have this renewed feeling. So here we go. So Mercury, we keep talking about Mercury, but for all of you that may or may not know, Mercury is a planet. It's the closest planet to the sun, and the energy that it represents astrologically and just kind of archetypal energy in our lives is that Mercury represents communications. All right. So Mercury is is it a Roman god or a Greek god? I can't ever get Roman or Greek in my head correctly, but it's the god that represents communication. It also represents travel. Particularly short travel. So think about your work commutes. Think about like going to LA from San Francisco. You know, we're not traveling like Iceland or across the world. This is just like short travel. It also represents technology. Mercury energy represents transactions. So purchasing transactions, negotiation transactions, anything related to like law and contracts. So all of those things where we're making agreements with people. That's why you probably heard people say, don't sign a contract during a Mercury retrograde. There's some truth in that, but we'll get into that deeper as we talk a little bit about this. So I don't know if anybody is here right now, but that's cool. If you have questions, again, please pop it in the chat. So basically, travel, technology, communications, you know, pretty much everything that freaking runs our businesses nowadays. So that's why things can go really, really nutty, because Mercury rules so much of our modern lives. And this time, Mercury is going to be going retrograde in the sign of Pisces. Now, Pisces is an entirely, totally different energy. So each time Mercury goes retrograde, it normally will go retrograde between 1 or 2 signs. This time it's only going retrograde through Pisces. And when it's going retrograde through Pisces, Pisces represents emotions and compassion. It also represents spirituality and instinct. The traditional ruler of Pisces is the moon, that, you know, the beautiful feminine quality that rules water and our tides and our emotions and our instincts. But the modern ruler is the planet Neptune, which is, you know, the god of the sea, and really those deep emotional depths. So when we think about Pisces, of course, we were thinking about compassion, but we're also thinking about like spiritual rebirth and a little bit of psychic abilities. So we think about where Pisces, we all have Pisces in our chart somewhere, whether it's in our house or whether we have planets that fall in there. We all have an aspect of Pisces in our lives, and it depends on which house it is, which kind of the precedent that Pisces takes in our lives. But we all have emotions. We all have instinctual instincts. So collectively, for everyone with Mercury running through retrograde through Pisces, this just gives us as a whole collective, as earthlings here, gives us a time to really reassess our emotional connections and to forgive and to connect back with people that we might have like fallen away with. This would be a really good time to do that, a really good time to look inward. So now if you think about retrograde in general, people tend to think of like freak out. But if you think about Mercury, this planet that is constantly on the go, constantly managing all of our day-to-day tasks, no wonder Mercury needs to go retrograde 3 times a year, because this is like Mercury's chance to go on a retreat, a 3-week retreat to restore, to reorganize, to re-energize. I don't know any of you here if you do yin yoga or restorative yoga. That's like the perfect thing to think about Mercury going retrograde, because while you may not think that yin is doing anything active, we are actually restoring and re-energizing by just being. How beautiful is that, right? So when we think about Mercury going retrograde, this is a perfect time to just redo, restore, reorganize, re-energize. Think of the word RE in the beginning of anything, and that is what we want to do during a Mercury retrograde. Now, not everybody is going to feel the Mercury retrograde in equal parts, right? The people that are really going to feel Mercury retrograde strongly are those people that have really strong Mercury energy in their charts. Particularly Gemini and Virgo, both of those signs are ruled by Gemini, ruled by Mercury. So those signs particularly will find Mercury retrogrades, they'll feel that energy a lot more. Now, if you happen to be born during a Mercury retrograde, this will be called, like, you have like natal Mercury retrograde. This happens for a lot of people since it happens for 3 weeks, 3 times a year. So you think about that's 9 weeks a year, essentially on average, that Mercury is going retrograde. People don't get stuck being born then, right? So there is a huge collective, a huge group of people that are born during a Mercury retrograde. And you can find that in your chart. If you go to like astro.com and you look at your natal chart drawing, you'll see a list of all of your planets. And if you have an R or like an RX that looks kind of like a prescription sign next to that, next to your Mercury, that means that you were born during a Mercury retrograde. And if you're born during a Mercury retrograde, when Mercury actually goes retrograde, you probably really feel a lot at ease, like, because it's your natural state, your natal state. So isn't that wonderful? So again, another reason to not freak the fuck out during a Mercury retrograde. So I want to talk a little bit about the houses and how that is going to affect your particular Mercury retrograde. So if you don't already know, the astrological wheel is not only divided by zodiacs, but the signs, but it's also divided by houses. And the houses have to do with, there's 12 houses, and they each represent a part in our lives that are basically a part of our lives. So 12 houses, represents all different parts of our lives. And so Mercury, even though it's in Pisces, that's for the collective, that Mercury retrograde in Pisces is going to happen in a different house for each of us, depending on the time that we were born. Let me repeat that. Pisces, Mercury retrograde going through Pisces is collective. That's happening for everybody. But on our individual astrological charts, where Mercury is going to retrograde is going to be dependent on the time that we were born, because that sets up the house structure, okay? So basically, you can look at your rising sign. The rising sign is indicated at the precise time and place that you were born. So for example, I am a Gemini rising because I was born at 1:42 p.m. in Honolulu. Not surprisingly, I have a lot of close friends that are Gemini rising. There's something about the elements and the time of day that we were born that we find each other and we connect. So it's important to know the time that you were born to find out what your rising sign is. Again, you can, if you don't already know this, you can also always go to a sign like a website, a free website like astro.com. No affiliation. You type in your place and your time of birth, and it'll give you your rising sign. Now, I can give you some basics about where Mercury is going to fall in your house, which house it's going to fall based on your rising sign. Of course, there's people that are cuspy and stuff like that, so you're going to definitely have to check back to astro.com, and you can look at the transits in the I think if there's like an advanced, extended natal chart readings, you can figure out how to look at your transits to see exactly where Mercury is going retrograde in your chart. But here's a handy dandy cheat sheet. I'll just go through all of the 12 rising signs, not your sun sign, your rising sign. And this is going to give you a key as to where Mercury is going retrograde, in which house Mercury is going retrograde for you. So if you are an Aries rising, Mercury is going retrograde through your 12th house, your house of spirituality, your house of the dream state. Some people like to say Pisces, or 12th house is ruled by Pisces, also about kind of regeneration and kind of karma. So when Mercury goes retrograde through that house, look for ways that you can redo things, like re-examine your spirituality. Where do you have questions of things that you want to revise in your relationship to spirituality? So that would be for people who have Aries rising. For people who have Taurus rising, Mercury is going retrograde through your 11th house. 11th house, ruled by Aquarius, is the house of community, the house of hopes and dreams and friendships and small groups. All right. So, and also like the house that is ruled by Uranus, of originality. So think very Aquarius. So if you're a Taurus rising, look at your Mercury retrograde in terms of what do you get to redo in terms of like reaching out to a friend that you might have had a falling out with, or reaching out and reestablishing your ties to a community, or reaching out and re-examining your relationship to hopes and dreams that you might have. Are those hopes and dreams still something that no longer serves you, or is that something that you want to like move forward with? All right. If you're a Gemini rising like me, lucky us, Mercury is going retrograde through our 10th house. The 10th house is our house of career and our public facing persona. So I'm actually already feeling it. I've been doing a lot of re-examining about where I need to be and who I need to be attracting in terms of my business. Who do I really, really want to be working with? Because some things have been not working for me in terms of kind of promotions that I've been trying to do. So I'm actually using this energy to re-examine all of those things in my work. So this is perfect for that. If you're a Cancer rising, Mercury is going retrograde through your 9th house, the house of expansion through philosophy, through higher learning, through far travel. So like broadening your horizons. So what can you redo in terms of broadening your horizons? Is there a coach that you wanted to hire? Is there a class that you wanted to take? Is there a trip that you wanted to take that you now get to re-examine and re-plan for? Those are perfect things to do during Mercury retrograde for you if you are a Cancer rising. If you are a Leo rising, Mercury retrograde is happening in your 8th house, the 8th house of transformation, of death and taxes and sex. So maybe you need to really spend that time at redoing your taxes, re-looking at things that are going on in your bookkeeping or accounting. This might be a great place and time to find mistakes that might find you more money in your tax refunds, or is this or other transformations, right? Great time to re-examine. Virgo rising people, Mercury retrograde is happening in your 7th house, house of partnerships, close partnerships. So think of business partnerships and committed partnerships and romantic partnerships, all of those things. Where do you need to re-examine and look at and maybe do a redo in terms of partnerships? Anything you need to assess, anything that you need to deepen and or forgive in those places. Libra rising, your Mercury is happening in the 6th house. Mercury retrograde is happening in the 6th house, the house of self-care and of routines and to service to others. So where do you get a chance to redo some of those things that have to do with your own personal wellness and how you serve others? If you're Scorpio rising, Mercury retrograde is happening in your 5th house of creativity and playfulness, and also of children, your children, your offspring. Where do you get to redo things and deepening your relationship to your own creativity, to your own playfulness, to your own children? Sagittarius rising. If you're Sagittarius rising, Mercury retrograde is happening in your fourth house, the fourth house that represents families and ancestors. Where do you get to redo your relationships and deepen your relationships with your family or your ancestors? Maybe you had a falling out with your mom. This would be a perfect time to reconnect. Hey, Natalie. Perfect time to reconnect with your family or your loved ones where you might have had some conflict. This perfect time to redo those things. Capricorn rising. If you're Capricorn rising, Mercury retrograde is happening in your third house of communications. Oh gosh, lots of opportunity here to redo communications. Where do you get a chance to maybe follow up with a contract that may have gone out of a client that you might have wanted to work with, but the contract or negotiations have stalled? You can restart that conversation during Mercury retrograde and really benefit yourself there. If you're Aquarius rising, Mercury retrograde happens in the second house of personal possessions and values. What can you do to re-establish that connection and re-examine what you really value, what you're valuing in yourself? Look at your self-worth. This is a perfect time to do that kind of work. And if you're a Pisces rising, finally, Mercury retrograde is happening in your first house, your house of self. Are you looking at yourself? Are you being truly authentic? That word gets thrown around so much nowadays. What does authenticity mean to you? And are you really being true to yourself? A perfect time to re-examine. All right, so everybody here, I just went through all of your rising signs and which houses Mercury is going retrograde through so that you can really pinpoint and use that energy to your benefit. But basically, here are a bunch of different things that we can all do to really figure out what we can use this Mercury retrograde energy to really get into that yin state, into that non-active state, that restorative state. All right, so if you could only give yourself permission to retreat in your own life, only give yourself permission to not hustle as much, right? We don't need to always be so active. And there are things that we can do in our lives that we're still feel productive, right? Like we're all running businesses. We all have shit to do. We all have things that we need to like accomplish. But this is the perfect time to just reassess, right? So if in your business, here's your 4 keywords that you're going to want to like really hold on to. Where can you reflect? Where can you relax? Where can you restore? And where can you reorganize? Because we all get a chance to redo, all right? So again, like I mentioned, I was re-looking and redoing all of my ads because I need to look at not only am I targeting the right people, but are my communications really hitting on target? Are they really speaking to the people that I want to speak to? I'm redoing all of those things right now. I'm also redoing my contracts. I'm looking at all of the agreements that I have to see if I can really, I haven't looked at them in years, and that's really bad. So this is a really good chance for me to re-look at all of my agreements to make sure that they're really speaking on my behalf and to protecting not only me, but also the people that I serve. I love this idea. So when you're redoing, if you've had a personal, a prospect or a collaborator, an opportunity that you really, really wanted to do, but you haven't heard from them in a while, this happens all the time. No fret, it happens to me. It happens to even like great business people. You get a chance to check in and reiterate your interest. This time it would be a great opportunity. So even if you sign a contract that you started way back when and reiterated your interest and get things back in flow, this would be a great time to re-sign a contract. So those thoughts about never sign a contract during Mercury retrograde, this is one of those exceptions because your contract actually started a long time ago. This is just the perfect time to restate and redo that kind of contract or negotiations or connection. So again, I talked about we get to review our contracts, our agreements, look at your policies, look at your negotiations, look at your privacy policy and your terms on your website. Perfect time to just redo those things. This is also a great time to refine. So if you have any content that's out there, like blog posts that are doing really, really well, like, you get a lot of traffic from those blog posts, redo those. Look at those and see where you can re-optimize those. Maybe you have some keywords that you want to add, or maybe you have or a link. Look at those blog posts, look at the high performing content in your arsenal, in your library, and refine those. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You're just perfecting this. And Mercury retrograde energy is a perfect time for refining existing content. And back up that without having to, you know, much ado, just back your shit up, or make sure everything is on the cloud. Even if things are on the cloud, make sure this is one of the great times of the year that you should have an archive of everything. Back things up. Do this now. If this is something that you don't do on a regular basis, I highly recommend it. Do not just depend on your cloud storage. All right. And of course, relax. Whatever you need to do to relax. Yesterday, I took a nap and I was so much more effective after I took the nap, even though I beat myself up for 20 minutes before I took the nap. I was like, no, you should be doing this. You should be doing that. Just relax. So many things you can do to relax. You know, with the moon in Pisces, it's watery. This would be a great time to just like take a bath, take a soak, go for a walk in the rain. Just cleanse yourself and relax, restore. Go to a yin yoga. Don't have to like vinyasa all the time and work yourself into a frenzy. Restorative yoga and yin yoga, it does miracles on you. And you don't have to do anything except for be. So yes, so I just want to again reiterate, people, there is no need to freak the fuck out if you bring intention and reflection during this time, during Mercury retrograde. All right, here's a quick list. Be intentional, slow down, check your work, back up your files, turn off your mobile in your car. You know, we talked about, especially during commuting, there's a perfect time to get into a lot of little accidents because you're rushing. So slow down, turn off your notifications, pad your commute time, speak with someone that you want to forgive. All these great things. All right, so questions that I have. Anybody have questions about the Mercury retrograde? If not, I'll just go through some questions that I've noticed people have been commenting on. Savvy Luminary here, Liana Ling, mentioned she's been having a lot of tech issues. Yes, you will probably have more tech issues now than in general. I mean, technology is such this like double-edged sword, right? It's so convenient and it's allowed us to do so many things online and run our businesses. And, you know, we take for granted when it's running smoothly because like it's just like the backbone of everything that we do. But when there are glitches, it just causes so much headache. And like people are like, we don't have time to figure things out. So take some extra time. Just forgive yourself and pad some extra time. Take things off of your calendar right now so that you have extra time to really go deep in the things that you are important to you. All right. So tech issues, yes. Back up, restore, examine all of your automations, see if they're still working. Don't you love that? I freaking hate that part. But you know what? It has to be done. Sorry. I'm saying sorry to myself. Amanda Fair asked, if we're slowing down, going with the flow, and approaching life in a more yin way during Mercury retrograde, is this a good way to be more harmonious with the energy? If we want to plug into a more masculine energy of getting shit done, is this in opposition to retrograde energy, or is it simply a matter of especially working smarter versus harder and equal parts rest and action? That was her long question. Yes and yes. So Mercury retrograde gives us the opportunity to slow down. But of course, we live in this modern world where we don't often have the time to slow down. We still have to get shit done. So when you're getting shit done, yes, if you have to be in this really yang energetic motion because like you have contracts happening, you have programs launching, give yourself extra time to restore. Give yourself extra time to work out glitches because they will probably happen. And if you're really just gonna use the energy to the best of your ability, make sure you find out your rising sign and see where Mercury retrograde is falling and which house it's falling, because maybe you don't have, maybe retrograde is not happening in for business or communications for you, so you can really just go full steam ahead. Susan Bell asked that she has a scheduled knee surgery at this time. So surgeries in general are not, especially elective surgeries, like are not really recommended during this time. Now, if you have to have a surgery, go for it. You need to have that surgery. It's gonna be fine. And I know personally with Susan, her knee surgery kept on getting rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled. So really her surgery started many, many, many moons ago, not during a Mercury retrograde. So hopefully at this time, she's going to have luck in getting that surgery accomplished because it is not an elective surgery. She needs to get it done and everything is going to be fine. So I hope everybody found this useful. If you have more questions, I'll put in the list of the houses and the rising signs to see where Mercury is happening for you in your house. And I really enjoyed the time here. So if you have questions or anything, just pop it in the comments. I know it's a long time to kind of pop on to a video during the middle of the day, but I just really want to get all of this energy out for you so you do not need to freak out during this upcoming Mercury retrograde in Pisces happening in March of 2019. All right, everyone, have a good one. Bye.